James Shaw, a 5-minute call.
Mr Speaker, I would also like to start by extending my condolences to the people of Vanuatu. It is a great tragedy what's happening over there, and I wish them all the best for their recovery, and I commend all the efforts of all New Zealanders who have extended their support via the Red Cross and other agencies. Mr Speaker, the people of New Zealand need to know that the government is introducing a bill that looks as if it is supposed to contain runaway increases in the pay for members of Parliament, but as far as we can tell, won't actually do so. Not only that, the government's abusing parliamentary process of urgency to rush through the legislation before anyone notices how flawed and ineffectual it is. It's a bit like their approach to climate change. They can claim that they're doing something about climate change because they've got an emissions trading scheme, even though emissions continue to rise. The ETS is a smokescreen that has no effect other than to enable the government to pretend that it's doing something. Much like last week's proposal, the latest version of the Remuneration Authority Members of Parliament Remuneration Amendment Bill uses a poor linking mechanism that sounds reasonable in the sense of linking it to public sector pay, but we don't believe will have any real effect. As a result, it seems as though the bill will likely to continue the run of large and unmerited pay rises for MPs. So instead of meaningful reform, the government's deploying a smokescreen. They want to be seen to be doing something the week before a knife-edge by-election in Northland without actually doing anything about it. In the process, they've actually adopted an approach that precludes meaningful scrutiny. They're not allowing public input. They're not looking for expert analysis. They're jamming through superficial changes under urgency and hoping that nobody will notice. The Greens will not support such contempt for proper parliamentary procedure, nor will we support such ineffective changes. We've consistently, over many years, called for real constraints on MP pay, but this is not it. I disagree with the member for Rimutaka who earlier claimed that voting against this bill is the same thing as voting for the status quo, although I can understand his point. If the bill has no meaningful impact, and the member from Rimutaka also said that we can't have any confidence that it will have any meaningful impact, then voting for it is the same thing as voting for the status quo. It's better to vote against a flawed bill. Passing a flawed bill that has no impact will mean that it may be some years before the matter comes back before the House, when we're once again embarrassed by the massive pay rises we're all getting. A completely different approach is needed. MPs' pay, according to this bill, MPs' pay would be linked to public sector pay as calculated by the quarterly employment survey, and a few other people have mentioned this. It's a bizarre choice. The QES is hardly ever used as a measure of pay. Not even the State Services Commission uses it as an indicator of pay. This is because it fails to control for changes in the quantity or quality of labour. As a result, changes in pay, as calculated by the QES, are not necessarily indicative of what workers are earning. Indeed, we don't have any confidence that linking MP to the QES would actually prevent large pay rises. We only received this version of this bill at 10:30 a.m. this morning. The analysis that we did on last week's version of the bill showed us that taken over the last 6 years, MP pay would be almost exactly the same now as it is under the status quo. The government hasn't provided us with any evidence that this new version would do anything to the contrary. The government's approach to this process shows contempt for the public and for proper procedure. MPs are supposed to represent the people. To that end, the people should have the right to scrutinise any proposed changes to MPs' pay. However, the government seems to consider this an inconvenience. They want to be popular and they want a quick fix. They don't want to select committee scrutiny. As a result, they're rushing the bill under urgency. This is something that the Green Party cannot support, and so we will not be voting for the bill at this stage. And as my colleague Maturi has said, we will be bringing in 3 different SOPs during the course of this debate to attempt to, given that we're probably in the minority on the voting front, to attempt to fix some of those problems that we see. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.